There was a time when I wouldn't have noticed the small things. Life had a rhythm, predictable and steady. Work, home, dinner, maybe a movie before bed. My wife and I had been together long enough that we didn't question the little changes in our routines until she started giving me a reason to. It began with the shopping bags. At first, I didn't think much of them. A few high-end brands here and there, nothing unusual. She always liked nice things, and we could afford them, so why would I complain? But then, the frequency increased. Every week, new bags. Dresses, shoes, purses, things she never wore, just store away like trophies. I remember the first time I asked. She laughed it off. "They're investments," she said, her voice light, dismissive, as if I were the fool for even bringing it up. Investments. That word stuck with me. Not because I didn't believe it. I didn't, but because I knew that she believed it was a good enough answer to keep me from asking again. And for a while it did. Then came the late nights. They started gradually. An occasional dinner with friends, a late meeting at work, an impromptu visit to the gym. No big deal. But then it became a pattern. Always something. Always a last-minute excuse. The first time, she said traffic was bad. She showed up 2 hours later than usual, her face a little too flushed, her hair a little too perfect for someone who had just been sitting in her car. The second time, she claimed her phone had died, which would have made sense, except she had just gotten a new one a few months ago, and I knew she was obsessive about keeping it charged. The third time, she came home in a brand new dress, one I had never seen before, claiming she had been out with her mother all evening. Her mother, who I had spoken to just an hour earlier. I didn't call her out on it. Not then. But something inside me snapped into place. A cold certainty that I was being lied to. I started paying closer attention. She was good, I'll give her that. A careful liar. The kind who rehearses her excuses in the mirror before using them. But the problem with lies is that you have to remember them all. And she wasn't as good at that as she thought. One night, she said she was with Emily. The next day, Emily posted pictures from a weekend getaway, 3 states away. Another time, she mentioned a work event. I checked the company calendar. Nothing scheduled. Then, the worst one. She came home late, glowing, that expensive new dress in her hands. I asked, "Where were you?" She didn't even blink. With Claire. Claire, who had posted a series of vacation photos that very same night. Claire, who wasn't even in the city. It was almost insulting how sloppy she had become. I didn't say anything, not yet. Instead, I let her think she was outsmarting me. I watched her lie to my face and convince myself that patience would be my weapon. So I tested her. The next morning, over breakfast, I casually asked, "How was last night?" She hesitated, just for a second, a flicker of something in her expression. Then she smiled and gave me her answer. With Claire. I took a sip of my coffee, nodded. Didn't challenge her. Didn't press. Because at that moment, I knew something with absolute certainty. I didn't love my wife anymore. I hated her. Hate is an interesting thing. It doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in, slow and deliberate, like a snake winding around your throat. One day, you're just suspicious. The next, you're staring at the person you once loved and wondering how you ever thought they were worth your time. I spent the next few weeks watching her. I didn't confront her. Not yet. There was no satisfaction in an accusation without proof, and I wasn't going to give her the chance to gaslight me, to turn the tables and make me out to be some paranoid husband. No, I was going to be smart about this. And so I waited. She kept up her routine of coming home late, feeding me lies like they were appetizers before a meal. Each excuse more ridiculous than the last. One night, she claimed she had gone to an art exhibit with her coworkers. But when I casually asked her to show me some photos, she fumbled, pretending she hadn't taken any. That was strange, because my wife took pictures of everything. Another time, she said she had dinner with her old college friend, Megan. I played along, nodding as if I believed her. Then later, I checked Megan's Instagram. She had been at home, posting stories about some reality show marathon. And then there were the clothes. At first, I thought the excessive shopping was just a side effect of whatever was going on. Some kind of guilt purchase to ease her conscience. But then I noticed something. She was buying outfits I had never seen her wear. Not to work, not to dinner, not even on weekends. Expensive dresses, delicate lingerie, luxury heels, things that were definitely not for me. One night, after she had gone to sleep, I went to her closet and started checking the tags. Some of them were still crisp, like they had barely been touched. Others were missing altogether, indicating they had been worn and then carefully put back, out of sight. And the receipts. Oh, the receipts. She had been careful to throw most of them away, but I found a few tucked away in her purse. They all came from the same place, a luxury boutique downtown. I stared at the name on the receipt, my fingers gripping the thin paper so tightly it almost tore. I had driven past that store before, a sleek, high-end place where rich women spent obscene amounts of money on clothing that cost more than most people's rent. The next day, I casually asked her about it. That boutique you love, when did you start shopping there? She looked up from her phone, blinking like she hadn't expected the question. Oh, a few months ago. They have great stuff. I nodded slowly. Yeah? You ever shop anywhere else? Sometimes, she said, a little too quickly. Why? Just curious. I let the conversation die there. I didn't need her to know what I was thinking. But now I had a new question burning in my mind. She wasn't dressing up for me. So who was she dressing up for? That was the moment when I stopped being just suspicious. That was the moment I knew. I was going to find out exactly who she had been lying to me for. And when I did, God help them both. I used to believe that trust, once broken, could never truly be repaired. What I never expected was how quickly love could turn to something else entirely. Something dark, something cold. I'd spent the last few weeks watching her lies pile up like bricks, each one stacking on top of the other, building a wall between us. And now, I had a direction, a place where some of those lies had originated. The boutique, a small, high-end clothing store nestled in one of the wealthier parts of the city. The kind of place where every item was outrageously overpriced, where the staff looked at you with thinly veiled judgment unless they thought you belonged. I had never been inside. My wife had never taken me. Now I had a reason to go. I decided to visit on a day when I knew she wouldn't be around, when she was supposedly at her yoga class, which I had long since stopped believing was real. I parked outside and stared at the store through the windshield, letting my thoughts settle. What exactly was I hoping to find? Confirmation? Proof? A name? It didn't matter. I needed something. The moment I walked in, I knew I didn't belong. The place was quiet, sterile, the air filled with the faint scent of expensive perfume. Racks of designer clothing lined the walls, arranged in a way that made it clear this wasn't a place for casual browsing. A man approached me almost immediately. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you? He was tall, well-dressed, the kind of guy who looked like he belonged in a fashion magazine. Sharp features, perfectly styled hair, an easy, practiced smile. I already hated him. I glanced at his name tag. Ethan. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I let my gaze sweep over the store, my mind working through the angles. Yeah, I said finally. My wife shops here a lot. Ethan's smile didn't waver, but there was the slightest shift in his posture. Just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. Ah, he said smoothly. We have a lot of regular clients. Do you know what brand she prefers? Perhaps I can recommend something for her. I didn't take the bait. She was here recently, I said, watching him closely. Bought a few things. Dresses, I think. Ethan hesitated, just a flicker of it before regaining his composure. I'm afraid I wouldn't know. We respect our clients' privacy. The way he said it. Now we don't track purchases. Now I don't remember. We respect our clients' privacy. Like this was something more than a simple transaction. I stepped forward, lowering my voice just enough to make it clear I wasn't here to play games. See, here's the thing, Ethan. I'm not here to buy anything. I just want to know if my wife has been getting special treatment. A beat of silence. Then that same fake smile. All of our clients receive special treatment, sir. I clenched my jaw. This guy was slippery, but he wasn't careful enough. I could see it now, the way he was holding himself, the way he avoided my gaze for just a second too long. This wasn't just a store to him. This was his territory. And my wife? She had been here more than just a shop. I let out a slow breath, stepping back, pretending to relax. No use pushing too hard. Not yet. Instead, I gave him a small, knowing smirk. All right, I said. I'll be back. And then I walked out, feeling his eyes on me the entire way. The pieces fall into place. I didn't drive straight home. I needed time to think. I had walked into that store looking for proof of an affair. What I had found was something worse. This wasn't just some random guy she had met at a bar. This was something planned, something deliberate. Ethan had known who I was talking about. He had tried to hide it, but he had slipped just enough for me to see, which meant that whatever had been happening between him and my wife, it had been going on for a while, long enough for them to get comfortable, long enough for her to forget that I wasn't stupid. I sat in my car for a long time, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I had never considered myself a violent man, but at that moment, all I could think about was how much I wanted to break something, or someone. I didn't go home. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, my mind racing through every interaction, every conversation, every moment over the past few months where something had felt off. Ethan. That name was burned into my mind now. The way he had looked at me, not with fear, not even with surprise, just that smooth, calculated confidence of a man who thought he had everything under control. I had walked into that boutique expecting to find breadcrumbs. What I had found was the entire damn loaf. And I wasn't done yet. I pulled out my phone and started going through my wife's social media again, this time with fresh eyes. I had never been the jealous type. I never needed to be. But now I was looking for something specific. Connections. Clues. Anything that would confirm what I already knew deep in my gut. It didn't take long. A post from 3 weeks ago. Her standing in front of a mirror, wearing a sleek black dress I had never seen before. Caption. A little retail therapy never hurt anyone. The dress was new. I knew that much. But the comments underneath? That's what made my stomach turn. Looks amazing on you. At the time, I probably wouldn't have thought much of it. Just a polite comment from a store employee. But now, knowing what I knew, it read like something else entirely. I tapped on his profile. Private, of course. But his profile picture was unmistakable. Same sharp jawline, same smug, self-satisfied smirk. I scrolled through my wife's likes and comments, searching for more. She had liked several of his posts. Photos of him in expensive suits, pictures of new arrivals at the boutique, even a shot of him drinking wine at some high-end restaurant. And then there it was, a comment from my wife. That place is one of my favorites. You always have the best taste. A casual observer wouldn't have thought twice. But I wasn't a casual observer anymore. She had never mentioned this place to me. She had never suggested we go there together. And yet, here she was talking about it like it was special. Like it was theirs. I set my phone down, staring blankly at the dashboard. I needed more. I wasn't going to confront her with just a few suspicious comments. She was too good at lying, too good at making me feel like I was the crazy one. No, if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. The hidden trail. I started searching for Ethan on other platforms, digging through tags, locations, anything that might connect him to my wife outside of the boutique. And then I found it. Not on his profile, his was locked down tight, but on someone else's. A woman I didn't recognize had posted a picture last week from the lounge of an upscale hotel. It wasn't Ethan she had photographed. He was just a background detail. A coincidence. But sitting behind him, blurred but unmistakable, was my wife. I zoomed in, my pulse hammering in my ears. She wasn't sitting with him, not directly, but she was there, dressed in something sleek, expensive, her hair styled in that effortless way she only bothered with when she wanted to impress someone. Her hands were resting on the table, close to another man's. Not Ethan. Someone else. I checked the woman's profile, scrolling back through her posts, searching for more. And then I found another picture from the same night. This time, the angle was different. And this time, I could see my wife more clearly, leaning in, smiling, her body language unmistakable. She wasn't just there. She was with someone. Not a co-worker. Not a friend. A man. Someone I had never seen before. My breath came slow and steady, controlled, even as the rage boiled beneath the surface. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a drunken slip-up. This was a pattern. Ethan wasn't the only one. And my wife? She had been living an entirely separate life, one that had nothing to do with me. A new plan. I didn't drive home right away. Instead, I sat in the darkened parking lot, staring at the faint glow of my phone screen, my mind racing through the next steps. Confronting her now would be pointless. She would lie, cry, twist the story into something I could never prove. No, I needed undeniable evidence. I needed her to have no way out. I was going to wait. I was going to watch. And when I had everything I needed, when there was no possible way for her to talk her way out of it, I was going to destroy her. I went home that night, but I wasn't the same man who had left that morning. The drive was silent, my grip tight on the steering wheel, my mind running through everything I'd seen. The boutique, Ethan's smug little act, my wife's secret life splattered across social media like breadcrumbs leading straight to the truth. She thought she had been careful. She thought she had me fooled. She had no idea that every lie she had told, every excuse she had given, was unraveling in my hands like a thread I was pulling tighter and tighter. By the time I walked through the front door, I had made a decision. I wasn't just going to find out the truth. I was going to make her live in it. The performance of a lifetime. She was already home when I arrived, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine in her hand, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. She looked up at me and smiled. "Hey, you're home late. Everything okay?" I stood there for a second, looking at her. Not just at her, through her. She had no idea what I knew. No idea that I had been standing in front of the man she had been sneaking around with, watching him lie to my face, knowing damn while he was sleeping with my wife. I smiled back. Yeah, just had a long day. I walked over, leaned down, kissed her on the forehead like nothing was wrong. She smelled expensive, like vanilla, and something floral, like the kind of perfume she only wore when she wanted to feel desirable. I fought back the urge to wipe my mouth after pulling away. "How was your day?" I asked, sitting down next to her, playing the role of the doting husband she had taken for a fool. She shrugged, taking a sip of her wine. "Oh, the usual. Work was exhausting. Claire and I grabbed dinner after. We needed a girls' night." Claire, the same Claire who had been 3 states away the last time my wife had used her as an alibi. I nodded, pretending not to notice the way she avoided my eyes. "Sounds nice. Where'd you guys go?" She hesitated. It was quick, too quick, but I caught it. "Oh, just that little Italian place downtown. You know the one." I didn't know the one, because I had checked their social media earlier. They had been closed for renovations all week. I looked at her, pretending to be the trusting, loving husband she had always assumed I was, and forced myself to smile. "Sound great," I said, standing up. "I'm going to take a shower." She nodded, already back on her phone, sipping her wine, slipping back into the comfort of her lies. Setting the stage. I locked the bathroom door and let the water run, standing there in silence, my hands gripping the edge of the sink. She was good, but I was better. Confronting her now wouldn't do anything. She would cry, she would lie, she would twist everything into something I couldn't prove. No, I needed more. I needed to catch her in the act. I needed undeniable proof. And I knew exactly how to get it. The bait. The next morning, I started my plan. Step 1. Make her feel safe. I acted normal. Even better than normal. I kissed her goodbye before work, sent her little texts throughout the day, asked about her plans for the weekend. I even told her I had a work trip coming up soon, something that would leave me out of town for a few nights. I watched her face carefully as I mentioned it. I saw the wheels turning in her head. The calculation. The opportunity. She thought I was handing her a gift. Good. Step 2. Track everything. She thought she was being careful, deleting messages, hiding her tracks, but people like her always get sloppy. They start thinking they're untouchable. I installed a tracking app on her phone that night while she was in the shower. A simple, hidden software that logged her location, her calls, her texts. She would never notice it. Step 3. Wait. Patience had never been my strong suit, but this was different. I watched as her habits started shifting. She smiled at her phone more. She started dressing nicer, even for simple errands. And then, one evening, she dropped the final piece of the puzzle right into my lap. She told me she was going to dinner with Claire again. That same, tired lie. I acted like I believed her. I kissed her goodbye, told her to have fun, and then, the moment she walked out the door, I followed her. The truth laid bare. She didn't go to dinner. She drove straight to a high-end hotel downtown, parking in a valet like she had done this 100 times before. I stayed back, watching from my car, my hands clenched into fists. She walked inside without hesitation, without looking over her shoulder. I waited 10 minutes before I followed. The lobby was dimly lit, filled with the kind of wealth that made people think they were invincible. I walked past the front desk like I belonged there, like I wasn't seconds away from tearing this entire facade apart. And then I saw them. Not just her. Him. Not Ethan. Someone else. A well-dressed man, older, rich-looking, the kind of guy who probably thought he could buy whatever he wanted, including my wife. They were at the bar, leaning in close, whispering, her hand brushing against his as she laughed at something he said. I felt something dark and heavy settle in my chest. I had expected to see her with Ethan, but this meant something else entirely. She wasn't just cheating. She was playing the field. Different men, different places, different stories. She had built an entire life behind my back, one where I was nothing more than a safety net. My hands curled into fists, my nails digging into my palms, so hard I nearly drew blood. I could have confronted her right there. Could have walked up, shattered the illusion, watched the panic spread across her face as she realized she had finally been caught. But that wasn't enough. She had spent months deceiving me. I wanted her to feel it, so I turned around and walked out. I wasn't going to stop her tonight. I was going to let her dig her own grave. And then, when she least expected it, I was going to bury her in it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet, controlled breaths of the woman beside me, the woman who had spent her evening in the arms of another man. When she came home, she acted normal. The same casual routine, the same soft sigh as she slipped off her heels, the same little smile as she crawled into bed next to me, thinking I was none the wiser. I had watched her, every movement, every detail. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't afraid of getting caught. She had done this before, many times. And the realization hit me like a gut punch. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a fleeting affair with one man. This was a lifestyle. My wife had built an entire second life while still keeping her foot planted in the safety of our marriage. And I had been too blind to see it. Until now, the setup. The next morning, I decided it was time to push things further. I made her breakfast. Not out of love. Not out of guilt. Out of control. I needed her to believe she was still winning. I needed her to keep underestimating me. I set the plate in front of her, watching as she smiled, kissed my cheek, and called me sweet. The same lips that had been whispering to another man the night before. Got any plans today? I asked casually, sipping my coffee. She shrugged, twirling her fork through her eggs. Not much. Might run some errands, maybe hit the gym. What about you? I smiled. Just work. Nothing exciting. Lies. She wasn't going to the gym. I knew because I had checked. Her location tracker was already showing movement. She was planning something, and I was going to be right behind her. Following the trail, I left the house before she did, giving her the illusion that I was going about my normal day. But instead of heading to the office, I parked a few blocks away, waiting. Sure enough, within the hour, she left the house. I followed. She drove downtown, took a route that was too familiar, and pulled into the parking garage of the same hotel where I had seen her the night before. I watched from a distance as she stepped out of the car, checked her reflection in the window, and adjusted her dress, tight, elegant, the kind of thing she used to wear for me. Then, she disappeared inside. I clenched the steering wheel, my vision tunneling. Every step she took was another crack in the image of the woman I thought I knew. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then I followed. Inside the lion's den. The lobby was dimly lit, the kind of place where secrets were bought and sold in whispers over overpriced cocktails. I scanned the room, and then I saw them. She was at the bar, leaning in close to him. Same man as last night. He was older, well-dressed, confident in a way that told me this wasn't his first time doing this. She laughed at something he said, her hand grazing his, her body angled toward him in that subtle, inviting way I used to think was just for me. I felt my jaw tighten, my fingers twitching with a need to do something, anything. I could have walked up to them, could have ended it right there, made a scene, shattered the illusion. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I took out my phone and did something much worse. I took pictures. Her hand on his hand on her thigh, her face glowing with the thrill of it all. They had no idea. The next move, I didn't stay to watch what happened next. I had seen enough. I walked out of the hotel, my mind already racing through the possibilities. Destroying her wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to live in it. I drove home in silence, my heartbeat steady, controlled. By the time she returned that evening, I was sitting on the couch, watching TV, playing the role of the husband she thought she had fooled. "Hey, babe," she said, kicking off her heels, running a hand through her hair. "Long day." I looked up at her, smiled. "Yeah," I said. Same old, same old." She had no idea what was coming. And that was my favorite part. The night before my wife's world would come crashing down, she slept soundly beside me, curled under the sheets like she had nothing to hide. Like she wasn't living a double life. Like she wasn't lying to my face every single day. I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every step I had taken to get here. The boutique, Ethan, the hotel, the older man at the bar. Every breadcrumb she thought she had carefully brushed away, I had followed. And now, I was ready to set the final trap. The perfect illusion. I woke up early the next morning, slipping out of bed before she could stir. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through the pictures I had taken the night before. Every angle, every touch, every lingering look. It was all there, neatly laid out like a crime scene waiting for judgment. By the time she wandered into the kitchen, stretching, yawning, acting like nothing in the world was wrong, I had already composed myself. "Morning," she murmured, pouring herself a cup of coffee. I watched her, studied her every movement, every detail of the woman I once thought I knew. She was good, too good. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have believed her. "Morning," I said, sipping my coffee, my voice steady. "Got any plans today?" She barely looked up. "Just work? Then maybe dinner with Claire." Claire. The same Claire she had used as an excuse one too many times. I nodded, swallowing down the disgust that threatened to rise in my throat. "Sounds nice," I said. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and went about her morning, thinking she was still ahead of me. She had no idea that today was the day it all came crashing down. The beginning of the end. I left before she did, same as usual. But instead of going to work, I parked a few blocks away, waiting, watching. I had already set up everything I needed. Every piece was in place. All I had to do now was let her walk right into it. Sure enough, right on schedule, she left the house dressed to impress, sliding into her car with that same casual confidence, that same complete lack of guilt. She wasn't going to work. She wasn't going to dinner with Claire. She was going back to the hotel, and I was already 3 steps ahead of her. The confrontation. By the time she walked into that hotel, I was already inside. Not in the lobby, not at the bar, but in a private room upstairs. I had planned every detail, booked the suite under a different name, ensured that everything was set up exactly how I wanted it. And most importantly, I wasn't alone. I had invited a guest, one she wasn't expecting, the older man she had been with the night before. He sat across from me now, confused, fidgeting with the watch on his wrist, staring at me with the uneasy expression of someone who knew he had been caught. "You're probably wondering why you're here," I said, breaking the silence. He swallowed hard. I don't know what this is about, but you know exactly what this is about." I cut in, my voice cold. "You've been seeing my wife." He opened his mouth, then closed it again, realization dawning on his face like a slow, sinking ship. I leaned forward. "Here's the thing. I don't give a damn about you. You're just another fool she's been using. But today, you get to see what happens when she realizes she's lost." I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen, activating the camera I had set up in the suite's adjoining room. A live feed of the lobby, where my wife was standing right now, waiting for the elevator. His face went pale. "You set this up," he breathed. I smiled. "Of course I did." The fall. We both watched as she stepped into the elevator, completely unaware that the moment those doors opened, her perfect little world was going to be ripped apart. I leaned back, savoring the anticipation. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "She's going to walk in, see you, and realize she's been caught. And then, well, then we see what kind of woman she really is." The tension in the room was thick, suffocating. The older man shifted uncomfortably, his confidence slipping. But I wasn't worried about him. I was waiting for her. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. And there she was. She walked in, her heels clicking against the floor, her expression relaxed, until she saw him. And then she saw me. Everything froze. Her face drained of color, her breath catching in her throat as the realization slammed into her like a freight train. She looked at me, then at him, then back at me. I smiled. Surprise. She took a shaky step back. I can explain. No, you can't, I said, standing up slowly. Not this time. Her eyes darted to the man beside me, pleading, searching for some kind of escape. But there wasn't one. She was trapped. And for the first time in months, I was the one in control. The ruin. How long? I asked, keeping my voice eerily calm. She swallowed, her lips parting, but no words came out. I gave her a slow, knowing nod. That's what I thought. I turned my gaze to the other man. And you? He looked down, ashamed. I didn't know she was married. I laughed, shaking my head. Of course you didn't. She's good at that. She flinched like I had struck her. Good. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the pictures. The ones of her with Ethan, the ones from the hotel bar, the ones from tonight. And then I turned the screen toward her. Her hands trembled. You had an entire life behind my back, I said, my voice even. Different men, different places, different lies. Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't like that. I raised a hand, silencing her. Save it. She sniffled, panic flickering across her face. We can fix this. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I smiled. Fix it, I echoed. No, sweetheart. I already did. I stepped past her, pausing just long enough to whisper, by the time you get home, your things will be packed. She let out a shaky breath, her fingers grasping at air. Wait, but I was already walking away. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.